In the early to mid-1990s, a couple of different computer companies got the idea to manufacture and design computers that would take a central role in a person or family unit's life. The idea was to have the computer move from something that was used occasionally for productivity, financial management, or just plain old kicking back and having fun with some computer games, to something that would take care of everything that you needed to do, watch, and remember in your day-to-day life. Now those companies were AST, Compaq, IBM, and Gateway 2000. Out of all of the offerings that eventually hit the market, Gateway 2000's offering was probably the most ostentatious. They called this the Destination PC, and to this day I believe it holds a record for the largest CRT monitor to ever ship with any kind of personal computer. Gateway's Destination PC was intended to be a home theater component, arguably one of the first home theater PCs ever made, if not the first home theater PC to ever be made. It had things like a TV tuner, and I believe it was also able to record television programming. The 31-inch behemoth of a monitor that it came with had a whopping 800 by 600 maximum resolution. I don't imagine there's a whole lot of these out there. I believe there is someone on YouTube who has one, but I do not recall who it is. Most people didn't buy something quite that fancy. Most people settled for a far more pedestrian offering, such as this, the Compaq Presario CDS520 series. This particular machine is a Compaq Presario CDS520 that my dad picked up off the curb several years ago. I tested it at the time and then I put it into storage, and now, in the days of YouTube, I'm bringing it out to demonstrate to all of you. Now, I will say that when I took this thing out of storage, it definitely had some problems. The hard drive was stuck, the monitor was out of focus, but after a little bit of service and a little bit of persuasion from my tiny quantum hard drive service mallet, or hammer more appropriately, I do have it up and running again, though how long it'll live is anyone's guess. The monitor was fine after it warmed up to room temperature, so I don't know if it just had some moisture on something, if it was capacitors getting ready to go, or whatever it was. Now, as you can see, this is an all-in-one computer system with the monitor and computer built into one piece. And it's hard to say from whose page of designs Compaq took that particular idea. Certainly the Macintosh had it many years before Compaq ever did, and of course there was also the offering from IBM, the IBM PS2 Model 25, and the various EduQuest machines that integrated a monitor with a computer. So Compaq could have taken the idea from anywhere, but it seems that the IBM idea was the most likely, because during the 80s and 90s, Compaq was in fierce competition and frequently copied everything IBM did, right down to the meanings of power-on self-test codes. Let's have a look at the insides of this machine, which is very highly integrated. Here on the back side of the machine you can see many things. You can see the information from the integrated monitor, manufactured in July of 1994, and where final assembly was performed. I believe these units were mostly assembled in Mexico, with some of the monitors being made there and others being made in Taiwan. In order to get in the back, you have to disconnect the power cord, and you should also disconnect anything that is plugged into the ports at the back. Now you can see that there are many integrated peripherals here. There's the game port, there's onboard audio, and there's a modem. And the unique thing about the modem is that it's fully functional as not only a data fax modem, but also it works as a speakerphone, which is a very unique idea. See, my dad bought one of these computers secondhand in about 1995 or so at Walmart, and that was his personal computer for a while. He used it until about 1997 or so, when I came to have it as a secondary machine, and then the Great Basement Flood of 2004 sadly took it away from me. It was kind of a bittersweet time when that happened, because that machine contained my very first ever posts to the Usenet network. That machine was actually the next model up. Now all of these are mostly toolless designs. You can get into the system without anything more than your own two hands, or in this case my thumbs. And then you grab this door, this handle back here, and you pull the system open as though it were a drawer. And the motherboard comes out to reveal a couple of things. There's a clock battery sitting there, a socketed ROM, multi-I/O controllers, and a system chipset, which is probably the VLSI sourced component. There's the microprocessor, some soldered memory on the motherboard, 2 SIMs. This machine has a total of 40 megabytes worth of memory in it, and Cirrus Logic Video, if you can remember them. Cirrus Logic Video chipsets were admittedly rather low end, but they did introduce some cutting-edge features, or at least useful features, that later found their way into other graphics accelerators that were much more powerful. In particular, one of the things that was very unique about the early Cirrus Logic chips is that they integrated not only the graphics controller, but also the random access memory digital to analog converter, or RAM DAC, into one chip, as opposed to requiring an external solution. That, of course, saved on component costs. You can see that there is a video memory chip there. That is the long rectangular chip. The double row connector, I believe that is a 15-pin connector, is a VESA feature connector. That could be used to attach a television tuner card or similar device that needs to or wants to overlay something onto the video that is being presented to the computer's monitor. The AT&T chips, of course, comprise the modem. And then over here is an ESS audio drive for the computer's audio system. And there is a Philips TDA 7053 stereo audio amplifier chip, because the computer has a built-in speaker system, and so it would need an amplifier. They are stereo speakers, of course. The motherboard connects to the rest of the system using a connector that looks not unlike either a PCI connection or, much more likely, a microchannel 16-bit connection with a matched memory extension. Down here, of course, you can see that Compaq actually put some art on the board, as well as a code name. There's a sort of profile and the words Sun Valley. There's also a series of initials over here that are probably the initials of the engineers who designed the board. The only other notable feature on the board that hints at superior models of this machine, and I don't recall which ones those were, but I know they were suffixed with TV in the model number. There is an audio input on the board for an optional TV or radio input. That would be installed in one of the 2 ISA expansion slots. Now when you go to put this system back together, if you should be fortunate enough to find one of these, you'll want to make sure that when you push this in, it's making good contact. Usually if it's not making good contact, either the machine will not complete its power on self-test, or the colors on the screen will be wrong, like the monitor had a broken signal cable or something. This is the area inside the cage where the motherboard lives, and as you can see, it doesn't look to be nearly as much fun if any of this equipment ever needed to be serviced. I really don't know how hard it is for sure, because I never had to do any service work on my other machine that I used to have prior to the flood, and this one is still limping along so-so. It's doing decently, but I know that quantum hard drive back there is on borrowed time, because it's already having the stiction problems that they are so famously known for, and of course hitting it with the wooden end of that hammer was not a very nice thing to do to it. There's a cooling fan grid up there that you can see, and let's see, Handycam, leave your light on. There's various power and video connections to the monitor assembly in the top of the system, which, as you can see, or may be able to see, says Compaq, product of Taiwan. So let's go ahead and put the motherboard back in the system. Now you want to be careful with this, but firm at the same time, because as I said previously, it's easy for this assembly not to make good contact and fool you into thinking that either the monitor is broken or the computer is damaged and completely dead. Now this computer could definitely use a good cleaning. I've never cleaned it up since I got it. But let's go ahead and power it on anyway. I should warn you, the hard drive has already been cantankerous about starting up, so I may have to try this a few times. Oh yeah, it's being ornery. Oof! Okay, there we go. Finally a good startup. You can see the machine doing its memory count right now to 40 megabytes of installed random access memory. Again, Compaq copied IBM in more than one way. Toward the later end of the PS2 line's lifetime, IBM moved from using reference disks with the systems to using a hidden partition on the hard drive that would boot into the system programs if there was a configuration error or if the user desired to do so. Compaq, of course, did the same thing. As you can see, though, they took a slightly different approach toward providing system setup and diagnostic utilities. If you press the F10 key when that cursor turns to a block in the upper right-hand corner of the screen, and if these programs are present and the hard drive works, you will enter the Setup and Diagnostics utility, which is completely graphical in nature. And as you can see, there are a variety of options that you can take. Should you find a computer like this with a dead or missing hard drive, these diagnostics and other software programs can be downloaded from the Hewlett-Packard support website to this very day if you should need them. And if you find a working system, you can, of course, create your own set of diskettes from which this system can be rebuilt onto the hard drive. Now, most of the things take this kind of a graphical user interface, but the setup utility is quite a bit different. It almost looks like a modified version of Windows 3.1, complete with a working mouse cursor and a program manager-like window that you can click on to configure things. Now, this is very unique. I'm sure some of you have heard of a 486SX2, but I've never seen one clocked at 66 megahertz before. The only variant that I have seen, or that appears to be halfway common, is the 50 megahertz variant that saw so much use in certain Packard Bell systems of the day. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of the categories in here and see what can be done. There you can view and change the system serial or asset management number. You can view information about storage, and like the disk drive and the hard drive and stuff like that. Thought this thing had a bigger hard drive in it than that, but apparently not. You can view information about input devices, energy savings, hard drive and screen timeouts. You can get help if you need information on what these system setup options do. As you can see, the system setup graphics are not particularly quick to redraw. Again, you can see strong hints of Microsoft Windows 3.1 and earlier inspired design. There are some bugs in the program. For example, if we click the video option, it tells us that there's nothing to configure, and then it leaves behind this very squatty looking little window with OK, Cancel, and Help buttons. And of course the only help that comes up is navigation because there are no settings. I have no idea if there would be a difference in the net effect of hitting OK or Cancel here, since there's no options you can set. You can view ports information. Interestingly, the game port is over in the input devices territory instead of over here with the other ports. There's system security for a power on password, and when to prompt for the password or if to accept it silently. And of course there's also a set of advanced options to further secure the system, which for a home-grade computer system is really kind of a unique idea. And then of course there is the audio hardware, and this is how much fun configuring audio used to be in the big bad old days of DOS. It used to be that you had to know all these settings and pick ones that would not conflict with anything else in the system in order to hear audio, especially from things like DOS games. So that's everything that's in the system setup area. Let's go ahead and boot this thing into its operating system. Now initially, Compaq shipped this machine with Windows 3.1 operating system software. Well, obviously it's arguable as to whether or not you can call Windows 3.1 an operating system. Some people do, some people don't. If you're one of the people who don't, you can simply say that Compaq supplied this computer with MS-DOS 6.22 and Windows 3.1 operating system software. So let's go ahead and restart. This particular example of the machine has been upgraded to Windows 95, which is slightly unfortunate because it breaks some of the special hardware that this machine has, like the speakerphone and answering machine capabilities. If this machine were equipped with the TV tuner, it would probably also break that capability. Still, Windows 95 is aware of some of the special hardware in this particular machine, something that I will show you more about later. Let's go ahead and watch it boot up here. Note that the dual beep during power on self-test time is normal for this vintage of Compaq computer. Does not indicate a problem like it does on other computers. There's that blinking square. I didn't press a key, so now it's handing off control to the actual installed operating system. Windows 95 with Microsoft Plus. Oh, well, I'm sorry to report it hasn't ended well, folks. Tried booting it up for you, and I guess the old hard drive just finally decided it had enough. it sat there and it diddled around for a while, and then the computer just hung up cold at that Windows wallpaper. And I gave up, cycled the power, and it's tried to boot a couple of times since then, and each time it's given up. And that hard drive just made a noise that sounded like all heck breaking loose inside. I would guess probably a head crash. Probably a head came off the end of the stack and just screwed up the disk platters like who wouldn't have it. Because now we have the official admission of defeat, and you can see that the post codes actually duplicate one for one what a genuine IBM personal computer would have said. And the system's own BIOS has given up on even trying to find a hard drive, and has asked me if I want to go ahead and commit that change or ignore it. So this machine is unfortunately going to require some repair, which is really too bad. I was hoping to demonstrate some of the original Compaq programs, even though they don't work fully correctly under Windows 95. I was also going to point out that the system time and date, despite the fact that I don't think this thing has run since sometime in 2005, was within an hour of being correct, and the day was right on, so apparently that old battery that's soldered to the motherboard is still plugging away. And I was going to demonstrate a few other things, such as the audio system and the CD-ROM drive, which will play a compact disc recordable disc, but it's very fidgety about doing so, and you can tell that it has trouble tracking the disc toward the outer edges of its area. However many tracks are on it, the ones toward the end, they just get more and more difficult to read, and you hear the drive start filling in missing data with samples instead of the actual proper compact disc audio playback that is expected. So until I rebuild the software on this thing, there's really not too much more to say about it. I guess I'll have to see how much of an ordeal it is to put a hard drive in here, and then I'll reload the operating system and make a part 2 to this video. So thank you for watching, and feel free to leave a comment if you've got one.